Good morning, Mayor, and welcome, and everyone, welcome to the Self-Help for the Elderly, Jackie Chan Center. As you see all around the room, there's this famous action star, Jackie Chan, who in 1996 came to San Francisco, and subsequently he came over about 6 times to raise money for this Jackie Chan Center building. He's really a wonderful, very humble person, and our seniors loved him. One time he came here, Mayor, I think Mayor Brown was at that time with the ribbon cutting. One of our seniors just brought up a bowl of soup that she made at home, and without thinking, Jackie will just drink it. And all his bodyguards was a little bit worried, right? Somebody just brought up a bowl of soup, but that's Jackie Chan. He's really wonderful. Mayor, I want to thank you on behalf of Self-Help for the Elderly. Your budget staff has always included the Jackie Chan Adult Day Health Service Center, which serves about 125 very frail seniors when they come here for day health care. So thank you for your support. And today, we assembled all of the executive directors of the API Council member organizations to welcome you to this press conference. And talking to Sarah and Kelly earlier, we said that, Mayor, this is one probably of the most excited and happy press conference for the API Council. Because last night I couldn't sleep, thinking, you've been wonderful at your budget announcement, your emphasis that you put on public safety, holding our seniors safe, and then protecting them as well as protecting them with programs and services. You also put emphasis on the homeless to try to lift up the homeless population. You definitely talk about food security and childcare and recovery of Chinatown, as well as for San Francisco small business. So all that API Council really have been working on for the longest time. We've been around for about 10 years, and we have over 50-some members. Kelly will talk more about the API Council. But every one of the members standing up here have done a lot of work to really support our community during COVID. For the seniors, besides the Senior Escorts program that you provided funding to us, we've also pivoted to doing over 5,000 home delivered meals a day so that our seniors won't have to go out to look for food. And then when the vaccines rolled out happened, we know that a lot of our limited English-speaking community just would not be able to go get appointments on their own. So a lot of us here really work hard to make sure that vaccines are available to the seniors, now to the homebound, and also the youth. So, Mayor, on behalf of the Asian Pacific Islander community, I want to thank you, and thank you for the really vast support that you have given to our community. And behind us are our Senior Escorts staff, headed up by Emily and Alex, and 4 of them are here. There have been already 80, 90 requests that came in for the escort services. And simple things like escorting them to Golden Gate Park for their daily walks because they missed that, they couldn't come out, or to take them to the dentist, or to take them back to see their own doctors. So all these personal appointments are really mean a lot to our seniors. So on our behalf, and on the seniors' behalf, thank you, Mayor. So without further ado, I want to introduce a mayor that needs no introduction. She's been coming to a lot of our community events, and today she will share with us, I think it's the best news, right, guys? The API Council has heard over many, many years. So let's give a big warm welcome to Mayor London Breed.
Thank you, Annie, and thank you everyone for being here. It's kind of strange being here with you all in person because the last time I think we saw each other, it's definitely been over a year. And in fact, we've seen each other through Zoom and meetings, but it's always nice to be in person. I just can't wait until we can get rid of these masks here. But in the meantime, it's still great to be here. And we know that when this pandemic first hit, it hit the API community more than any other community in the city. And from an economic standpoint, we saw Chinatown completely abandoned. We saw xenophobia and the treatment of folks in our Asian community increase significantly, from our elderly to our children. And there was a real hit. I know in the beginning, we went to Chinatown. We provided some immediate relief for some of the small businesses, but we were not expecting to be in a pandemic for over a year. And in fact, it has been very, very challenging for our city and our country as a whole. And the rhetoric around the API community coming from, the leader of this country, I think made things even worse. And it was important for us in this city to really buckle down, to make sure in the beginning when I had to meet with so many of you in person to say, look, this has been hard, it's coming down. We expect COVID to hit San Francisco, and part of the challenge we experienced was the density of Chinatown in particular in that community, and the need to make sure that people were supported, that they had resources, that they have food. So many seniors that are served, this is where they come to connect with one another. And so part of what I wanted to make sure we did is listen to the community, maintain the funding, but provided additional support to address some of the inequities that would exist in a very, very dense community, but also in other communities that serve larger populations of seniors in San Francisco. It's been a real challenge, and we've seen COVID disproportionately impact minorities in San Francisco, which is why we had to take our testing apparatuses to communities and meet people where they are. The Asian population as a whole represents a little bit over 30% of the population in San Francisco, but sadly represented almost 40% of the deaths. And so it was this community was particularly hit hard in that regard. And we have seen this, significant rise. And this is sadly not a new issue of the attacks that we have seen here in San Francisco on our Asian seniors in particular. But it has been heightened. It has increased significantly. Like nothing any of us has ever experienced before. And it is heartbreaking. It is, yes, frustrating, but heartbreaking that anyone would be the kind of person who would attack someone as vulnerable as a senior. The thing that I don't mess around with are our kids and our seniors. That has to be off limits. We have to have some boundaries. We have to have some understanding about the need for making sure that not only are people held accountable, but it never happens in the first place. And so today, we're here to talk about many of the investments that we need to make in the API community in particular, not just because of the challenges that exist as it relates to some of the more recent violence, but also many of the inequitable disparities that exist in this community. So what I did was listen to the community, to respond to the needs of the community, because many of these organizations, which represent over 60 organizations that serve the AAPI community in particular all over San Francisco, they're on the ground. You all are on the ground. You know what is in the best interest of the people that you're serving every single day. So the requests that came in were not hard requests to meet, because it's just really an expansion of what you are already doing based on the increased need that you see with the people that you served. I remember a couple years ago when I was supervisor and I went to Komochi. I'm glad John Hosaki is here with us today. I went to Komochi and I was in the front, and I remember there were some people who walked up, seniors who were turned away. And I was with Steve Nakajo, John, and I asked, I said, what's going on? He said, we just don't have enough. We don't have enough. And I thought to myself, how can you turn a senior away who's coming up and asking for food? And in fact, Komochi, with tons of volunteers, were doing 3 servings a day, And we got increased funding, I think, that following year so that we can increase the amount of support, because we should never have to turn anyone away. If someone is coming who is in need, we should never have to turn them away and say, sorry, we don't have any room. Can you imagine already the challenges you're experiencing in life, and then to be told, no, we can't feed you today, and you have to figure it out on your own, especially if you're a senior? So these investments, which are absolutely incredible, will be significant. In fact, to address the challenges around the uprising, around what we see of the hate targeted at the API community, we have also seen the uprising of this community, of a cross-cultural community coming together through ambassador programs, through escort programs, through cross-cultural connections. And so we're going to be investing about $6.5 million to support that effort, which includes expanding the senior escort program, providing support around victim wraparound services, supporting Chinatown arts, culture, and tourism recovery and development, and stopping the AAPI hate campaign, which is really targeted at education, building cross-cultural relationships, and this is very significant as we move San Francisco forward. In addition to the challenges that we've seen related to those issues, we still are in the midst of our recovery. So there's still food that needs to be served. There's still people that need help. We want to continue our vaccinations, and in fact, to support COVID recovery, $14.3 million, including Chinatown vaccination and continued community partnerships around vaccination and testing, daily street cleaning in Chinatown. Now look, I know we're not in Chinatown, but the fact is a lot of the folks in this community spend a lot of time there too, so we want to make sure in that community it's taken care of. Daily street cleaning, small business support fund, grants for businesses to retain employees, and culturally competent outreach to support businesses in applying for state, local, and federal programs. I was on Clement Street, which I visit quite frequently, and I ran into a business owner who said, you know, I don't know how to apply for this money, and he was the perfect candidate to get federal resources because he had less than 10 employees. And so we have to make sure that all of the businesses that qualify get the support they need to apply, and we're there to help them in addition to the investment. We're also going to be investing in workforce development, food security, and mental and community health, because we know that has been a very significant challenge in our city as a whole, but especially with our children, which we know in many cases are still not back in school. Addressing the inequities, we're providing about $14.1 million. The $5.5 million will be to maintain social services and many of the safety nets that, so that the programs that get existing funding, that received one-time funding, that funding will continue. We'll continue to support the senior operating subsidies, which is going to be really great for seniors so they can have more money in their pocket to pay for, you know, their ability to take care of themselves. About $3.6 million for child care needs, specifically for this community, although more resources around child care will be available for low-income and middle-income families. Because you know there are those families that make just a little too much to qualify for child care subsidies, who are struggling as well. And so lots of great things in the budget, but one of the things that I also want to mention, in addition to Jackie Chan, who is an American icon, not just an icon in the API community, there's also another icon of Asian descent that comes from San Francisco, and that is Bruce Lee. And I know Goretti's back there clapping, but The Chinese Cultural Center is working on what I think is a very amazing exhibition. They've raised a significant amount of private funds to do an exhibit highlighting Bruce Lee, his history in San Francisco, which I think is so fitting at a time like this. You know, like I was a Bruce Lee fan. Like I thought I could do you watch Bruce Lee on TV as a kid, and everybody thought they were Bruce Lee when you were in elementary school. And what was so cool is, you know, we knew he was from San Francisco. So it was a connection there where this person it was a big deal back then in the 70s and 80s to be on television. And he was on television, but not only was he on television, he was on television kicking everybody's butt. So it was really great to see him on the big screen, and this exhibit will receive support from the City and County of San Francisco to make sure that it is a reality. So I'm very happy about the arts and culture and the support there. So many amazing projects, so many wonderful things. Today is just really about highlighting what the city needs to do to invest in the API community because it's important. It's important to make sure that we build an equitable city. And that equity starts with making sure that those who are serving folks throughout the city in our most vulnerable communities are lifted up and cared for and know that they matter and that we as a city care about investing in them because they deserve it. We owe it to them to take care of them. They took care of us. And lastly, I'll just say, you know, you always hear the stories about me and my grandmother. And the reason why I bring up my grandmother so much is because I was a bit of a bad kid. And I gave her such a hard time. I would ask so many questions. Mama, why this? Mama, why that? And the fact is, when I think about how challenging, so some of you who have kids, right? So when I keep my niece or nephew, after 5 minutes, I'm losing it. I'm like, I call my sister, I'm like, come get your kids, please. So when I think about what my grandmother as an elder person had to do to deal with me and my brothers in particular, I feel like I wish she were around today so that I could really express how much I appreciate her now because I didn't understand as a kid the value. And so all that appreciation for Ms. Brown is now spilling on to my advocacy for the seniors of this city and my desire to make sure that they are all taken care of. So know this, I will continue to, of course, support the residents of this city, but we also need to make sure, more importantly, that all of our seniors in San Francisco are supported, uplifted, and well cared for. And that will continue to be a focus of this administration. Thank you all so much for being here and for your advocacy and your work. Almost forgot, Callie. Ladies and gentlemen, the executive director of the API Council, who brings all of this together and continues to advocate for support and resources and be a leader in the efforts to support the AAPI community, Callie Wong.
Thank you, Mayor Breed, for that kind introduction and for your vision and leadership. We're here today for a really exciting reason. We are super excited to be prioritized in Mayor Breed's budget. Again, my name is Callie Wong with API Council. We are a coalition of 57 direct service nonprofits in San Francisco, and many of whom are here today. I'm proud of the work that we have done together to serve over 350,000 low-income Asian and Pacific Islanders in San Francisco and work to ensure that our community is reflected in the city's budget. And today, I am proud to stand with you, with leaders of the AAPI community and our mayor to celebrate a tremendous victory. At its core, Mayor Breed's support of our recovery efforts aim to address the immense pressures faced by those on the margins. Asian and Pacific Islanders are a third of the city's population, but represent almost half of those who are impoverished. While we are hopeful for the future, far too many in our community remain in critical need of assistance in continuous ways. The city's investment of $35 million in the AAPI community is the first of its kind in the history of San Francisco, and perhaps our nation. It represents a model for how local government can not only listen to the needs of a community in crisis, but also support its plan for recovery. API Council members here today have been the boots on the ground meeting the needs of vulnerable populations before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and most certainly after the pandemic. And we are clear on our path forward, stopping Asian hate, COVID recovery, and addressing inequity. These are the pillars that our community's healing are contingent. Services include a citywide safety initiative for victim services, violence prevention, support for small businesses, workforce development, food insecurity assistance, housing subsidies for low-income families, and maintaining the safety net services our community has fought so hard to sustain year after year. Thank you to my members who are here today. Every executive director present here represents a nonprofit service that the mayor has prioritized in her budget. Our city's budget reflects its intent to build healthy communities and to serve the most vulnerable among us. API Council looks forward to championing this work today and in the years to come. Thank you again, Mayor Breed, for your advocacy and for coming out here today. And now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, the Executive Director of JCYC, John Osaki.
Hello, everyone, and I just want to say what a pleasure it is to be able to see our mayor in person for, God, it seems like forever. And I just wanted to share that, it is so nice for, as a member of the Japantown community, that we have a mayor who is from our Western Addition, who knows the struggles that our Japantown community and our Black community fought against, literally and figuratively were bulldozed over at one time in this city. And, unfortunately, the Japantown community knows far too much about Asian hate and how hateful rhetoric and political agendas and the need to blame somebody could lead to tragic injustices in this country. And when my father, after 4 years of being incarcerated during World War II, with $25 in his pocket, made his way to San Francisco. And our family has been part of the Japantown community ever since then. And I am so pleased at the mayor's announcement today and the opportunity to lift up so many of the families, not just in Japantown, but in all the Asian communities here in San Francisco, because as our mayor knows, not all of our families are successful. Many of them are struggling. The COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated many issues for our community, and this is a huge step in addressing many of the needs in our API communities. And I just want to end by saying that, it is so critical that we have a mayor in San Francisco who really believes in the same things that we believe at JCYC, and that is that we move forward together. And I'm so grateful to have this opportunity. And I just want to make this last point that San Francisco, many people have forgotten, was at one time ground zero for Asian hate in this country. It was once the home of the Asiatic Exclusion League. We had a former mayor who advocated for the banning of Asian immigration into this country. And so for this mayor to come forward, make this commitment to the Asian community, I just want to say that it sets a model and a precedent for the rest of the country, and it really elevates San Francisco and shows what I think the rest of the country should be modeling in terms of its support for our communities and the needs that need to be addressed throughout all of our Asian communities. So thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for being here today, for sharing this wonderful news, and we look forward to working with you in the years to come. And it is now my pleasure to introduce the Executive Director of CYC, Sarah Wong.
Thank you, John, for your introduction and for all the work you do on behalf of Japantown. And to Madam Mayor Breed, thank you so much for your leadership in supporting the historic $35 million budget for the API recovery in San Francisco. With your support and collaboration, we've been able to achieve the unprecedented feat for the API community that even I haven't seen in my 24 years working in the community. And I'll echo what Callie said, it probably is historic in the history, not beyond my 24 years. So since last year, CYC has joined forces with our community partner and founded the Coalition on Community Safety and Justice, a culturally competent network with the goal to develop an effective citywide plan in partnership with the city to address the incidents of violence against Asian American. And one of the strategies is creating a citywide API community outreach team. And immediately we received the support from May Breed that we're able to start our Asian community outreach workers team, who now speaking in Cantonese, Mandarin, Vietnamese, and Tagalog, and working closely with the Street Violence Intervention Program together, building solidarity and going out as a multicultural team every day since mid-March to reach out to our merchants, community members in Chinatown, Tenderloin, Leland Avenue, San Bruno Avenue, and Clement Street in the Richmond district here. Our victim support team offers short and long-term wraparound services for victims and survivors. We, in many cases, are the first touch point that the victims and families of violence are being referred after experiencing trauma. A lot of our API survivors of violence has been facing barrier with accessing support, which is why our service has to be culturally competent and language accessible. And here I want to do also, again, a special call that if anybody see the 84-year-old elder that has been missing for the past 6 days, please contact any law enforcement. We could have brought her home if we have the language accessible service last Friday when she was being picked up. So we really need to work together, seriously standing together, providing cultural competent and language accessible service to all the constituents in the API community and everyone. This alarming rate not only is about Asian hate, but other violence resulting from burglary, theft, and a global pandemic have left many in our community grasping for hopes. As we starting our victim support services since February, very sadly, we have already over 25 cases just solely in San Francisco that we have reached out to. And it has proven that community-based solutions works. I haven't seen it, we all seen it behind the API Council. The mayor's budget will fund a citywide API safety initiative aiming at increasing community safety and allocating resources to support victims of violence. A victim fund and other neighborhood-level safety initiatives, such as Japantown, Tenderloin, will allow survivors and their families to recover without financial roadblocks and cultural or language barriers to access services. Our elderly, they can heal and partake in outdoor activities without fearing their safety. As the pandemic has amplified social and economic disparities, the budget will support hard-hit small business in cultural districts, providing housing solutions for low-income residents and seniors, and enhance the workforce development for the API community. At CYC, we work with over 8,000 youth every year. This budget will allow us to assist our low-income, at-risk, and marginalized youth and families with issues like homelessness, food security, mental health, violence, and childcare. And again, thank you, Mayor Breed, for championing of our recovery efforts in this budget. It is a major step towards addressing the long-term needs of the API community, and we appreciate you and your staff for hearing our concerns and trusting in our community-based solutions. Thanks again for having me, and now I would like to invite Callie back to the podium.
We're going to bring the mayor back, and then we'll open it up for questions and a photo op.
All right, let's open it up for questions.
Mayor, you just mentioned there's a Stop AAPI Hate campaign, so I was wondering who will be leading the campaign. Is that CCSJ or some other organizations here?
It will be a collaborative effort. CCSJ definitely will be a core part of it, but a lot of our members, like I mentioned, will also have to work with the Senior Escort Program, street violence intervention program, so a lot of different community partners together, and of course, working closely with SFPD and also the District Attorney's Victim Support Services.
And to also add, because, and thank you, Sarah, because, you know, for example, the escort program, self-help for the elderly, is taking the lead in that. And then the thing that I didn't mention was the street violence intervention program, and working with Sarah Wan at CYC, they're going to continue to monitor and be out in specific neighborhoods. They're out there on a regular basis. We consider them ambassadors. So everyone is pretty much taking the lead on this work in various ways. So it won't be a one-size-fits-all. There's a lot of different things that we need to do to address this challenge.
So, Ms. Mayor, the $35 million, is it for 2 fiscal year combined or for each fiscal year?
It's over the course of 2 fiscal years, but the bulk of it is for this upcoming fiscal year.
So, Mayor, are you looking for a long-term budget about the same content in the following years?
I think it would depend on the need, so, and also the revenues that the city has. I mean, here's the thing. The bigger picture here is the past year's 2-year budget, we had to balance a budget with a $1.5 billion deficit where we didn't lay off any city employees, we didn't make any cuts to any of our nonprofits. And this year, we anticipated a $650 million budget deficit. But because of the rescue plan from our president, which and the federal government, people like Nancy Pelosi, our speaker, and Vice President Kamala Harris, that pretty much helped with the deficit that we anticipated, which has made it possible, along with unanticipated increase in revenues, to do this kind of work. The stimulus money for the city in general, for transportation and a number of other things, that has been a game changer for us. And it has put us in a situation where we don't have to raid our reserves in order to make these sort of investments. So this is pretty remarkable, but we do have tough days ahead. And this is why we're continuing to pay down debt. We're continuing to put more money in the reserves. We want to be prepared for any situation. And because we have had a sufficient amount of reserves for the city over the years, it put us in a position where we didn't have to make any layoffs or any major cuts. So continuing to be responsible and then investing in the places where the need is most significant is what we will continue to do. All right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you so much.